Greetings, all! Today, we'll be examining the legendary Psychic-type Pokemon Mewtwo, the Genetic Pokémon. A being of impossible willpower that few could ever hope to match in terms of raw power, Mewtwo is both a fascinating and terrifying beast who stands as the epitome of what humanity can create when all borders of ethics are shoved aside for the sake of power and power alone.
Mewtwo has a humanoid form to it, with pale purple skin and darker purple skin on its belly and long, oblong tail, with 3 fingers with bulbous rounded ends and 3 toes on its feet, 2 in the front and 1 on the side of their foot's back for stability. It has a thick plate of hardened skin on its chest, as well as a second spinal cord that connects the back of its head to its upper torso, further featuring squared-off ears, small nostrils and mouth, and purple eyes. It also has the capacity to undergo the process of Mega Evolution in not one but 2 ways. Mega Mewtwo X is the same general build as Mewtwo's normal form, but also features thick muscles on its arms and thighs, so much so that they bulge out from beneath its skin, with a pair of rounded dark purple crests that wrap around its chest and shoulders, more pointed ears, and blue eyes. Mega Mewtwo Y, on the other hand, has a much smaller form with thick bulbous dark purple toes and fingers, a small chest spike, red eyes, and a third spinal cord that wraps around the top of its head like a tilted headband, and its normal second spinal cord hidden within a dark purple elongated tail-like head crest that coils at the end and rubs on the back of its head like a tail. Decades ago, a top-secret cloning project was undertaken by a scientist only known as Dr. Fuji that would change the world beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Giovanni, the leader of the once powerful Team Rocket, had employed and ordered Dr. Fuji to use his untested cloning plans, something he had been working on for years, to create the most powerful Pokemon ever known. His official order? Create an amplified and superpowered clone of Mew, one of the first Pokemon known throughout recorded history, and perhaps the greatest of all known creatures in terms of versatility and combat capabilities. This task was originally deemed impossible because nobody had seen Mew in many centuries, but during an expedition through the jungles of Guyana, a fossilized Mew hair was discovered among some abandoned ruins. Amazingly, there was just enough genetic material within the hair for replication to be performed. This is what began the now infamous Project Mewtwo, and after its conclusion, the Mewtwo Incident. However, the scientist employed by Giovanni was not following orders simply because it was his job. He was doing it to restore his family. For reasons unknown, the scientist's daughter had died by some tragic cause far too early in her young life. If he could succeed with this project, he believed that he could restore his family and perhaps save whatever humanity he had left after the experiment. Undeterred by the challenge, Dr. Fuji and his colleagues began a long and difficult process attempting to clone the DNA and produce fruitful copies of the original. All, however, led to utter failure. In response, the scientists began to physically manipulate not only the hair's genetics, but the genetics of other Pokemon, hoping to find a stable method of producing a viable clone that was both more powerful than and just as stable as the original one. In the process, many lives were born and ended before they could even live, but eventually one clone was produced, on February 6th, that would eventually become Mewtwo. About the same time, the scientists were experimenting with 4 other clones, one of a Bulbasaur, a Charmander, a Squirtle, and the clone of Dr. Fuji's daughter, dubbed Amber 2. From what the records show, it is known that Mewtwo had some brief second contact with the other 3 beings before was forced to watch them disappear forever, as they all died shortly after this brief second connection was made. This caused a chain reaction of psychic energy to go off in the infant's head, and a massive dose of relaxant was needed to calm and stabilize Mewtwo's brainwaves. In truth, the other specimens would never have survived. Mew's DNA was the only sample ever found that could handle the recombination and alteration required for the cloning process developed by Dr. Fuji, though it was later mastered and utilized for the prospect of cloning fossils. Nearly a year later, Mewtwo woke up ahead of schedule. Bursting the glass cage containing him, Mewtwo did not even have a few minutes to himself before all the research staff around him were preparing to test its powers. Perhaps still holding a lost memory deep in its heart, Mewtwo refused to let anyone test him as a weapon, and it promptly destroyed the laboratory it was contained in. The lab itself was once known as the Pokemon Mansion before Cinnabar Island was destroyed by a volcanic eruption, and it is duly noted that, while some believe from scraps of journal entries that Mewtwo was literally born of a Mew, this is merely a false hypothesis and more or less metaphorical in meaning. Shortly after the lab's destruction, Mewtwo met face-to-face with the man responsible for its creation, the former head of Team Rocket, Giovanni. Giovanni played his trump card and offered to give Mewtwo a purpose in life if it would work with him as a partner. Not realizing his intentions, the newly matured Mewtwo agreed. For nearly 14 months, Giovanni used his vast resources to train Mewtwo, helping it to learn how to control its immense psychic powers. But when Giovanni finally revealed that he only ever planned to use Mewtwo as a tool, Mewtwo fought against him and escaped into the wild, setting in motion the events of the Mewtwo Incident. Several months later, approximately 25 years ago from the present, a group of young kids was invited to attend a prolific celebration in their honor, granting them the chance to battle the most powerful Pokemon trainer alive on an isolated fortress on a small patch of land called New Island. It was only after arriving that Mewtwo revealed itself to be the challenger they had been seeking. Believing all non-cloned life forms to be inferior, Mewtwo captured all of the trainer's Pokemon, cloned them, and then forced the two sides to fight one another. In the middle of the conflict, however, a Mew appeared and began battling with his deranged counterpart until one of the young trainers stepped in the way of their blast and became petrified by their combined psychic energies. While it is uncertain how it happened, it appears that the sympathy that all of the other present Pokemon displayed towards this tragedy, including the cloned ones, was enough to destabilize the intense psychic bond, freeing the young trainer. It was only after this that Mewtwo realized that all life deserved to exist and, regretting his decisions, journeyed off with the Mew and the clone Pokemon to parts unknown. A few years later, another incident involving Mewtwo and Team Rocket was reported in the Johto region, but details on this event are even scarcer, possibly due to the creature's proven ability to psychically tamper with the memories of others.
While Mewtwo may have originally been designed to be a perfect copy of Mew, the repeated recombination of its genes led to some unfortunate side effects, particularly in regards to its personality and powers.
Unlike the otherwise cautious and carefree Mew, Mewtwo is recognized to be cold, calculating, and tactically sound in all parts of combat, and is perhaps the only Pokemon known to have completely mastered the art of battling without the aid of a human. Although the creature possesses a body structure similar to Mew's, its body proportions were greatly altered as a side effect of tampering with Mew's genes, as demonstrated in its sheer size. Furthermore, Mewtwo possesses an unbelievably complex system of nerves in its body that go far beyond the capacities of those possessed by other creatures, not only in terms of the sheer volume of nervous tissue in its body, but in regards to the fact that each nerve seems to be capable of carrying psychic energy. As a side effect of the recombination process, Mewtwo managed to acquire a second spinal cord, which protrudes from its back, that is linked to the back of its pelvis and brain by a complex thick mat of pure nervous tissue. While Mewtwo's normal spinal cord controls its main nervous system, the second spinal cord, which is protected by its own spinal column, is used solely as a conduit for transferring psychic power throughout its entire body, in turn allowing Mewtwo to manipulate its psychic power to the fullest extent without sacrificing brain functions in the process, or potentially destroying its brain through a psychic overload. Like many other Psychic-type Pokemon, Mewtwo is able to amplify and focus its psychic power by concentrating and meditating for extended periods of time, an act that few people ever see. Although little data is available to truly gauge the kind of power that Mewtwo possesses, from the original data available on the creature, it seems that Mewtwo's power of psychic manipulation can apparently extend almost down to the individual manipulation of molecule-sized particles, and it is quite possible that Mewtwo has already demonstrated such powers during its lifetime. Oddly enough, this seems to have a dramatic impact on the creature's overall physical form, as it is hypothesized that Mewtwo could generate and hold so much psychic power that would physically destroy the cellular tissue in its body without actually destroying its mind. In other words, the sheer willpower that Mewtwo possesses is enough to potentially destroy itself, but not strong enough to destroy Mewtwo's mind in the process as a result of its ability to control its mental functions and psychic power separately. This intense capacity to wield psychic power in such an abnormal fashion is more than demonstrated within the creature's learnable moves, as its access to a wide variety of moves like Recover, Psychic, and Aura Sphere that perfectly complement its powers, and is the only Pokemon known to be able to utilize the devastating Psy-Strike attack, an improved version of the basic Psy-Shock attack designed for destroying opponents with weak physical defenses. Attempts have been made to replicate its powers, but it seems that Mewtwo only survived as it is today because a rare genetic mutation caused its powers to increase to far greater levels than normal, in turn making any successfully produced copies inferior in terms of power, intelligence, and longevity. Even with that, clones of the original are scarce and are only seen on an extremely infrequent basis.
Regardless, and not surprisingly, the sheer level of intimidation this being is capable of grants it access to pressure as its only base ability. But in cases where its form is a bit more radically altered, and instead results in stomach-churning feelings among others, can grant it Unnerve as a hidden ability instead.
As far as the stats are concerned, the immense power that this beast wields is more than reflected in its combat attributes, with only its base special defense stat being below average for fully evolved Psychic-type Pokemon, additionally possessing the highest base stat total out of all Psychic-type Pokemon, tied with Lugia, Hoopa Unbound, Solgaleo, Lunala, Necrozma in either of its fused states, and Calyrex in either of its rider forms, though not including Ultra Necrozma, thus rendering it a force of absolute destruction that few can match or even hope to overcome in any sort of confrontation.
Furthermore, it is noted that Mewtwo is one of only a select number of Pokemon known to be capable of undergoing the process of Mega Evolution. But unlike almost all other Pokemon in this category, with the exception of Charizard, Mewtwo can potentially possess two different Mega Evolutions.
The cause behind this strange anomaly is still under investigation, but it seems that the heart of the dividing line is marked by reliance on either physical or special offense in battle. Moreover, the fact that Mewtwo is a relatively recent creation suggests that its ability to Mega Evolve had to have been inherited from Mew, though whether or not a similar type of Mega Stone exists for Mew is currently unknown. If Mewtwo is holding a Mewtwo X, Mega Evolution would turn the beast into Mega Mewtwo X. In this form, Mewtwo does not sacrifice any of its special powers, but otherwise is tuned out of them to some extent. In other words, his body stops producing the chemicals it normally produces to sustain life functions and begins to produce different ones, most notably a super lethal combination of concentrated growth hormone and adrenaline. This has the effect of making Mewtwo's body muscles grow to a ridiculous size, bulging so far off its bones that they distend the skin on its limbs and grant it a larger, sickeningly muscular form unlike anything seen in any other Psychic-type Pokemon. Moreover, its limbs become extremely elastic, allowing it to stretch its body parts to more than twice their normal length, accelerating its physical blows to speeds that would easily tear the limbs off of weaker beasts. This radical shift in body form alters the way in which Mewtwo responds to attacks in such a way as to change its type assignment, turning it from a pure Psychic-type Pokemon into a Psychic Fighting-type Pokemon. It is additionally noted that this chemical imbalance seems to heighten the aggression of Mewtwo considerably, making it much more prone to sudden, prolonged outbursts. In terms of stats, this radical body mutation has the effect of slightly increasing Mega Mewtwo X's base defense and special defense stats, likely due to the addition of the bulk muscle as padding, and unfathomably increases its base attack stat. In turn, against the highest base special attack stat out of all Fighting-type Pokemon, the highest base attack stat out of all known Pokemon, and the highest base stat total out of all known Pokemon in general, tied with Mega Mewtwo Y and Mega Rayquaza, and not including Eternamax Eternatus. Furthermore, the noted increase in aggression is equally met by a diminished capacity to react or otherwise respond to fear, making the beast stalwart in the face of fright and in turn effectively converting its ability to steadfast. It is hypothesized this Mega Evolution variant is an unnatural mutation brought on by unknown forces, so unnatural in fact that some suspect that this Mega Stone is actually an artificial construct, and while it might not capitalize on Mewtwo's best natural stats, it does turn it into a devastating force to face both from afar and in close quarters.
If Mewtwo Mega Evolves while holding a Mewtwo Y, however, it will instead Mega Evolve into Mega Mewtwo Y.
In this form, unlike nearly all other known forms of Mega Evolution, Mewtwo actually shrinks in size substantially and becomes a different type of organism altogether. Mega Mewtwo Y is effectively a much more compact version of this legendary creature, but shares most of the same anatomy, with the obvious exception of its head. While it may be difficult to imagine, in this form, Mewtwo actually has 3 and not just 2 spinal cords. While its normal extra spinal column has been compacted into a tail-like extension attached to the back of the creature's head, a third, much smaller spinal column has developed as a small loop near its forehead. This mutation has the effect of not only magnifying the special powers of the beast even more than normal, but, strangely enough, also seems to heighten its movement speed to the point where it is not only a bit faster, but can attack with greater force in close quarters, enabling it to hit with physical attacks more intensely than normal. The only real problem that comes with this power is that Mega Mewtwo Y's smaller size makes it considerably more susceptible to physical damage, but this is only a minor issue in most cases. In terms of stats, this radical change in body form has the effect of moderately decreasing Mega Mewtwo Y's base defense stat, but more than compensates for it by slightly increasing its base speed stat, considerably increasing its base special defense stat, and critically increasing its base attack and special attack stats. In turn, against the highest base special attack stat out of all known Pokemon, and the highest base stat total out of all known Pokemon in general, tied with Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Rayquaza, and not including Eternamax Eternatus. In addition, the fact that Mega Mewtwo Y has 3 different spinal columns in its body means that its brain is constantly operating at maximum capacity and can never really shut off even for sleep, in turn granting the creature the insomnia ability. It is believed that this form is a natural Mega Evolution of Mewtwo and more than modifies the devastating traits it already possesses, making it an unstoppable fighting force that even the greatest of defensive fighters are unlikely to last very long against.
Mewtwo has generally done its best to stay out of the public eye as much as possible, and has managed to do so quite effectively over the years since the events following its initial birth. But one clone of the original has made a noteworthy appearance recently in the Unova region during the events of the New Talk City incident.
10 years ago, 4 normal Genesect, including a shiny red version that acted as the leader of the group, found themselves living in a world far beyond the time they knew well, after being resurrected and in turn were forced to cope with the radical shift in environment. While these beasts all came to interact with some people and Pokemon around Pokemon Hill of New Talk City, a sanctuary built to act as a haven for Pokemon of all kinds that prefer the look of nature over the surrounding city, the Red Leader saw all as a threat to the safety of his kind and used wireless transmissions to force his brethren to attack humans and Pokemon that it deemed threatening. One such beast happened to be the legendary Pokemon Mewtwo, not the original one but a female clone who had a similarly rough life as to what the original experienced, who took little offense to the attack as it somehow knew that they were in unfamiliar territory. The Genesect went into the sanctuary within the city and began to build a giant cocoon-like nest out of cyber-organic string as a home base. Little did they know that the roots of their home were intruding upon the electrical generators beneath the city, causing them to malfunction to the point of self-destructing, which could have potentially caused massive blackouts and fires if not disconnected from the power grid. A battle ensued between the Red Leader and Mewtwo, who was forced to Mega Evolve into Mega Mewtwo Y multiple times during the course of the fight, while a group of young trainers took to controlling and becalming the rest of the squad on the ground. Sadly, the worst came to pass when a massive electrical fire started in the wooded area, creating a catastrophe in the process. Thankfully though, the young trainers were able to reason with the other Genesect and convince them, as well as the other Pokemon present in Pokemon Hills, to help stop the blaze, which they did post-haste. After a bit of a fight with Mewtwo, ending with Mewtwo forcing the leader into space in order to break through his ignorance, an issue the leader did not understand as none of the Genesect realized that their home had existed 300 million years ago, the Red Leader was in turn relieved of its rage and came to understand that the world was no longer what it once was, but was nonetheless the same planet. The Genesect managed to find a new, safer place to build their cocoon home in the middle of Pokemon Hills, and the Mewtwo clone left, confident that they would finally be able to live in peace now.
There is an argument to be made here, I think, about what should and should not be within the realm of decency and morality when it comes to the creation and development of new life. And if there is any creature that shows this more than any other, it's definitely Mewtwo. This entity never asked to be born or created, and to some, maybe it shouldn't have been. It was made not to have a good life on its own, but to be a devastating ultimate weapon for some of the darkest forces in this world. And on that, they've definitely succeeded in their prospects, and certainly too much for their own good. While Mewtwo might be outwardly aggressive or dangerous to others, it is not without reason, and anything that tries to challenge it is more than likely in for a battle that they may have little hope to actually win. Beyond its immense fighting capabilities and its capacity to make you evolve into not just one, but two different forms though, there is a living being here, one with thoughts, emotions, and a desire to simply find a place where it truly belongs in the world. As a traveler from a world far away from this one, I can very much sympathize with Mewtwo and his predicament, as everyone should be able to find a place where they belong. I don't know if it will find that place one day for itself and all that it cares for, but I can say at the very least that it will do whatever it takes to defend those that call it a friend and obliterate all that stand in its way.
With the literal power to tear apart others without any recourse, and a sense of willpower perhaps greater than any other man-made creature, Mewtwo is a powerhouse unlike any other, truly, and more than worth fearing in any scenario. The chances of ever seeing this entity are thankfully quite slim, but for those that manage to even glimpse it, know that it may not see you as a friend or ally in any way, even with the best of interactions.
As such, do yourself a favor and be ready for the fight of your life if it steps up to the plate, for mankind sought to create the most powerful Pokemon ever, and in many ways, they more than succeeded.
Thank you all for watching this video. It always brings me great joy to see others enjoying the work I do to try and make the world of Pokemon and the fascinating creatures that lay inside of it feel as real as they possibly can. If you really enjoy my work, please feel free to leave a comment and subscribe, as I always do my best to respond to any and all comments that are left on my videos. In addition, if you wish to learn more about my work and help support it, you can find links to my Patreon page, as well as email and other contact information to my work on DeviantArt in the video description down below. Furthermore, you can find a link to my Discord server there as well if you'd like to get a first glimpse at what videos are coming up next and converse with other fans of the world of Pokemon. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.